Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and chess fans everywhere watching this TVapex program. My name is Ray Keane. I'm a chess grandmaster, and I write on chess every day in the Times and on Sundays in the Sunday Times. And we do our best to bring you the best possible coverage of chess that there is. Now, this evening, I'm going to talk for about an hour concerning the recently concluded World Chess Championship match between Viswanathan Anand of India, the defending world champion, and his challenger Magnus Carlsen from Norway. And it's no secret that Magnus Carlsen won the match. He won 3 games, 7 games were drawn, and that was enough to give Carlsen the decisive edge which brought him victory in the overall contest and made him, at the age of 22, a very young world chess champion indeed. Only Garry Kasparov, also at the age of 22, but a couple of months younger than Carlsen was when he won, has achieved a more spectacular record of winning the World Championship at a younger age. Now, I'm going to talk to you tonight for about an hour. I'm going to summarise what happened in the match, and I'm going to go through what I consider to be the decisive game, and that was game 9. And we've got the starting position up here, we've got the game set up, and in a few minutes I'm going to start going through the game for you to try to explain what I think was happening. Now, let me talk for a while about the course of the match. Before the match, Anand had been world champion since 2007. He won the championship in a tournament in Latin America, Mexico City, and he then defended the title very convincingly against the former champion Vladimir Kramnik in Bonn in 2008. Later on, 2 years later, Anand defended the title again against the Bulgarian Grandmaster Veselin Topalov, although his title defence on this occasion wasn't quite as convincing. And then last year in Moscow, 2012, he defended the title yet again against the Israeli Grandmaster Boris Gelfand. And on this occasion, Anand's defence really creaked. He scored levelly in the 12 games of the match itself, and only won the title in the final playoff of rapid games. So Anand's progression in winning the championship and defending it gradually became less and less convincing. Meanwhile, Anand's performances in tournaments had become really rather substandard. He found it very difficult to win tournaments. In fact, he was finding it more and more difficult even to win games against the very best players. And at the same time, young Magnus Carlsen from Norway was steaming to the fore, winning tournaments, getting very powerful results, beating the top players again and again. And finally, at the candidates qualifying tournament in London in the spring of this year, 2013, Carlsen won the right to challenge Anand for the World Chess Championship. He tied for first in a tournament held in a building overlooking the River Thames. He tied with Kramnik, but the tie-break system in force meant that Carlsen was the one who went forwards and got the chance for a crack against Anand's title. Now, before the match, opinions were obviously divided as to who was the favourite. My belief was that Carlsen would win, and that he would win by a 2-point margin. In fact, he won by a 3-point margin, even more convincingly than I'd predicted. But I felt that Anand had simply lost the appetite for really top-class chess in the past few years. He wasn't motivated, he merely wanted to cling on to the title for as long as possible, and I was absolutely convinced that Carlsen would in fact win the title, as he did. Now, as the match progressed, and it started quite slowly with a few draws, the world became almost obsessed with chess. And figures indicate that possibly as many as 1 billion people knew about the match or followed it in some way, electronically, on the internet, in print, radio, or by whatever means. And this figure of 1 billion is really quite extraordinary. Everybody knew about it. Norway, of course, went chess crazy, the home country of Magnus Carlsen. They went completely bonkers about chess. It was on the front pages all the time, and the Prime Minister of Norway even went on television to congratulate Magnus Carlsen when he won the match. In India, I think almost everybody was following the match, desperately hoping that their man, Viswanathan Anand, would recover from his rather slow start and save himself. But in the game I'm going to show you in a few minutes, that's game 9, we see the final destruction of Anand's hopes of retaining the title. Now, for anyone who's just joined us, I'm going to recapitulate what I'm doing. I'm talking now about a summary of the World Championship match between Carlsen and Anand. I'm then going to go through what I consider to be the crucial game. And after I finish speaking, those who wish to watch this again will find this program archived by TVapex, and they can watch it again from tomorrow and for as long as they like by going to TVapex, www.tvapex.com. If you've got questions about the games, the match or anything, you can contact me at www.twitter.com/times_chess. You can see that up on your screens now. And please, by all means, become a follower of Times Chess. Send me a tweet. I'll try to answer your questions if I possibly can. Anybody who wants to send in a question, please do, and I'll do my very best to answer it, whether it's about the World Championship, about this particular game, game 9, or about chess in general. It doesn't matter. Also, before I start going through the detailed summary of the match and game 9, I just wanted to say something about the Times coverage of chess. I write a chess column every day in the Times, and at the weekends I write a column in the Sunday Times. We try to be as up-to-date as possible. I try to explain the games in terms that are possible for the chess enthusiast to understand. I give a daily chess puzzle, a winning move, for you to solve. And on the Times Twitter site, again you can see that in front of you on the screen, in the header, to see it live, I'll repeat that, to see it live, we try to follow live every single important game of chess played in every single important tournament as it is played. And we are doing our best at the Times and the Sunday Times to bring chess fans, chess enthusiasts, chess followers, and I hope you become a follower of my Times Twitter feed with its regular updates. We're doing our very best to bring you the most detailed, up-to-the-minute, live chess coverage any newspaper has ever brought any of its readers in the entire history of reporting chess. Now, once I've finished speaking, I'll repeat again for those who may have just joined us. I'm going to go through the game. It's going to be game 9, and I think that's the decisive game played in this World Championship match. But after that, you're very free to watch the game archived as from tomorrow on TVapex, and also tonight when I've finished, and from now on you can see my series, the 12 best games of chess. That's the 12 best games of chess. It's up on TVapex, very easy to find, and you'll find 3 games played by former great champions of chess, and they'll be up there all the time. You can access them whenever you like. So as backup to the game that we're going to see soon, you've got 3 games by the very greatest players, past champions, which are always available to you for study or for interest or listening to the comments, looking at the brilliant ideas. Let's return to the match between Anand and Carlsen. The first couple of games were drawn. They weren't very interesting, to be frank, quite perfunctory draws. In the third game, Anand had the chance to grab a seemingly dangerous hot pawn, but he didn't do it. And his only chance to win that game was to take the pawn. And subsequent analysis has proven that had he taken the pawn, Anand would probably have won the game. And that would have changed the course of chess history. As it was, Anand chickened out. Some cruel commentators called it chicken madras. Of course, we didn't do that in the Times. That was Anand's big chance to go 1 point ahead right at the start, game 3. He didn't do it. He couldn't summon up the courage to take that hot pawn, and I think he would have won the game if he had. In game 4, Carlsen, as black, did take a hot pawn, and he very nearly won. He gave Anand all sorts of headaches before Anand bailed out into a draw and saved the half point. And then the match began to swing entirely in Carlsen's direction. He won games 5 and 6 from endgames, which frankly even computers could not predict could be won. This was an amazing performance by Carlsen, showing that he plays almost like a human computer. Carlsen moved 2 points ahead. The next 2 games were drawn, 7 and 8, and then came game 9. There are 12 games in this match before they go into a blitz playoff if the scores are level. And in game 9, Anand had white. And if he could win this game, he would only be 1 point behind with a couple of games left to play and still everything left to play for. But he had to win this game. It was vitally important for him to win this game. And Anand really pulled out all the stops to win game 9. And this is the game I'm going to show you now. If Anand won, the match was still open. If Carlsen won, as we know he did, then everything was over. But it was an exciting game, well worth looking at once again. So, Anand is white, Carlsen's black. It's game 9 of a 12-game match, and I'm going to run through the moves with you now. Here we go. Anand's first move. He plays pawn to d4, taking the centre. In other games as white, he'd play pawn to e4, and you can see the coordinates around the edge of the board, A through to H, and 1 through to 8. So it's very much like following an A to Z street map. You can see the coordinates very easily. That pawn is d-file, 4th rank, pawn to d4, grabbing the centre. And Carlsen developed his knight, knight to f6, and white continued with his plan of occupying the centre with his pawns, pawn to c4. And if you can build up a big pawn centre in chess, control the centre, the odds are you're going to get an advantage. Carlsen played e6. Now white would like to play his pawn to e4, but he can't because the square isn't defended. Black's knight would just take it. So he prepared to play e4, pawn to e4, getting a huge pawn centre by bringing out his queen's knight. And the threat is now pawn on e2 to e4. Black could stop this and play his pawn on d7 to d5, taking a foothold in the centre. But more exciting and adventurous is this move, bishop to b4, promulgated by the strategic genius of chess, the 1920s Grandmaster Aaron Nimzowitsch. And the point of the pin on the knight is that, again, if white plays pawn to e4, black simply lops it off with knight takes e4. The knight is pinned and white loses a pawn for nothing. So white played a slightly unusual move, pawn to f3. The point is, he wants to play the pawn on e2 to e4 and build up a gigantic bulwark of pawns in the centre and dominate the board. And black has to do something to stop this from happening. He can't just stand idly by and let white build up this enormous pawn centre. He gets steamrolled, crushed, juggernauted. He has to do something. So Carlsen now took a foothold in the centre and played d5. Again, he's stopping white from playing e4. And Anand attacked the black bishop. Now, the black bishop could retreat, go backwards. It could go, for example, to the square e7 in front of the black king. But then white could play e4, advances e-pawn 2 squares, and achieve his objective. So, to stop this from happening, Carlsen traded bishop for knight. Bishop takes knight, bishop takes c3, check to the white king. And white's got absolutely no choice. He must take back. And now white's got an incipient large pawn centre. It can become a big pawn centre one day. And he's also got the advantage of the two bishops. Two bishops against bishop and knight in a fairly open position, as this is, can be a significant advantage. But black's also got some advantages. White's position is a bit weakened by the move of the pawn to f3, and black's got plenty of foothold in the centre as well. So black established, in fact, accentuated his grip on the centre and played the move pawn to c5. And then took in the centre. Black could take back with the knight on d5. Knight f6 takes pawn on d5. Very commonly played. And in fact, Anand had beaten someone horribly who tried this against him in a tournament in Holland some time ago. But Carlsen played pawn takes e5, e takes d5, confirming once again his desire to get a pawn in the centre and to stop white from playing pawn to e4. Anand moved his pawn 1 square forwards, not 2, and his idea is to develop his king's bishop, that's the bishop on f1, to the square d3. And then he'd have his pieces lined up against the black king side, and he would augment his chances of getting in this advance e4, which he'd like to do. Because now white has a real armada of pawns in the centre, and once he starts to advance, it's quite possible he'll crush black off the board. And now Carlsen played the move that I really hadn't expected. He pushed his pawn 1 square forwards. This takes away the pressure against white's centre, because black is no longer threatening to capture on d4. And it also stops the white bishop, the king's bishop, the light squared bishop, from coming to the d3 square. So one disadvantage, pressure taken off the white centre. One advantage, the bishop can't go to d3. But it seems a very static sort of move. It's the sort of move that beginners often play. But here it's got perhaps rather more point than might at first sight appear. For example, the square b3. You can see that very easily. B file up 2, 3, 2 across, is now weak, and black's going to try and plant a knight on that b3 square. And also white's got to find an alternative way of developing the king's bishop. First of all, he brings out his knight. He must develop his pieces. Black brings out a knight. And now white plays a very aggressive move, pawn to g4. And his idea is to move the pawn up to g5, 1 square forwards, chase away the black knight, and help his chances of advancing in the centre with e4. That's always the theme of white's play. And the king's bishop, the light squared bishop on f1, which would have liked to go to d3 but can't, is now given a way of developing on the square g2. Again, in the future, reinforcing the idea of advancing in the centre with e4, which must always be white's main strategy. Black castled his king into safety, and out came the bishop on g2, again eyeing that e4 square we've been talking about for so long. And black moves his knight to the side, aiming to jump into the white position on the b3 square, which black completely controls. White castles, knight jumps into b3, and of course that knight is attacking the white rook on a1. And one might be tempted to play rook on a1, one square to the right, rook a1 to b1, but actually what Anand played, rook a2, is more clever, because now the rook can switch along the second rank towards the king side and help with the attack that white is building up on the right hand side and in the centre. So good move by Anand, I like that. Carlsen plays very vigorously. White has a majority of pawns in the centre and on the king side. Black has more pawns on the queen side, so he starts to advance them in the hope of creating what's known as a passed pawn. That's a pawn with no other pawn blocking it that can advance towards the main back rank and become a queen. And we'll see that promotion to a queen of black's, or one of black's queenside pawns, becomes one of the big themes of the game. White's theme: push in the centre, attack on the king side, advance the e3 pawn to e4. Black's theme: rush those queenside pawns forwards and try and make a queen with one of them. So this is a fantastic contest and clash of very clear ideas. Attacking against the king and in the centre, and the desire to advance the pawns, make a pass pawn, and then make a queen and win on material. White's knight moves towards the king side, perfectly logical, and black moves his queenside pawns forwards yet again, all exactly in line with what I've been describing. White attacks the black knight with a pawn, so the black knight has to move away, goes to the back rank, and now, at long last, white has the chance to make this desired advance in the centre, pawn to e4. And you can see that the white pawns on the right hand side of the board, the king side, are creeping forwards like a sort of, as I said before, a juggernaut, like a bulldozer, like a tank, massing of forces in the centre and around the black king. And now, what black doesn't want to do at all is to allow the white bishop on c1, the one next to the queen, to escape, for example, to the square e3. And that would leave the black knight on b3 looking very pretty, very impressive, but nowhere to go. So to deprive white of the bishop pair, Carlsen takes it. It's a shame to say goodbye to that knight, but once the white bishop moved away, which it was threatening to do, it wouldn't have had much point being there. So this was a good decision. White takes back with the queen. And now, a very interesting move by Carlsen. He moves his rook forwards to the square a6. And this isn't just moving on the queen side. You might think it's a queen side preparatory move. It's putting the rook where it can be defended by the black bishop on c8. And that plays a big role later on. But he's also threatening in some cases to use the defence of the rook laterally, moving sideways left to right across the screen, to help in the defence of the king side when the storm bursts, as it inevitably will, on the other side of the board. Anand pushes his pawn forwards, and now he's got a real mass of pawns threatening to charge up and demolish the black king. And not to be outdone, Carlsen defends his queenside pawns, prepares to bring the knight into a more, perhaps I say, aggressive posture in defending on the king side, and adds extra protection to the rook on a6. Here comes the storm, Anand's pawns advance again, and black strikes back. Now, here is a moment where I think Anand could have improved. I don't know whether he could have won, but he has a couple of choices here. One would be to play his pawn from a3 to the a4 square, one square forwards. It blocks out the black knight, and it makes it more difficult for black to push forwards his passed pawn, which you would get after playing pawn to b3. Another idea would be to play the pawn on f4 to f5, and again, to ignore what's going on the queen side, just plough on the king side and try and destroy the black position. And a final choice worth considering is to play the rook that's on a2 across to f2, right across to the king side, and again use that as extra force when the king side attack finally occurs. What Anand played looks sensible, but there's a problem with it. He captured. Carlsen takes back. Anand captures on a6. Carlsen takes back with a knight, the point of bringing his knight across. So the knight is now threatening to become active both on the queen side and, if necessary, in defence by rushing back to the square e8. And then on comes the avalanche of white pawns. I mean, that looks really dangerous. I must say, when I was watching this game being played live, I thought at this point that Anand was going to win. But Carlsen isn't worried. He pushes his pawn to b3. And the problem is that Anand's traded off rooks on the a file, as we saw, to reduce black's defensive possibilities. But at the same time, he's reduced his own capacity to stop that passed pawn on b3 from advancing and becoming a queen. Anand needs all his pieces on the king side in order to crash through with his attack, and he's got nothing left to hold up the b pawn, the black b pawn, and that's one reason why it would have been more clever not to have traded pawns a few moves ago, but to have played a4 as I suggested, or move the rook across, or just carry on advancing the kingside pawns. Because now Anand's split. It's rather like the Battle of Waterloo. You know, White, Napoleon, against Wellington, is trying to crash through the defences, but on the other side of the board, the black b pawn, the Prussians, are advancing and coming round to attack Napoleon in the flank. So this is the dilemma. If White's attack doesn't work now, the b pawn may well win the game for black. Up comes the white queen, joining in the attack. Black knight comes back to defend. The pawn thrusts itself into black's guts. Black sidesteps the pawn and also keeps his pawn structure around his king intact. White queen comes across, and White's plan is very simple. Queen goes to h6, threatening queen to g7, checkmate. Will White's attack triumph before Black gets his defences in order and gets his passed pawn moving? The knight now defends the g7 square against checkmate, but White has another checkmating plan, which we'll see. Up comes the queen, and the plan is rook f1 to f4, and then rook f4 to h4, and Black gets checkmated. And again, when watching this, I thought Black was probably going to lose. I didn't see how he could untangle his formation and what he could do to stop the white forces from gathering around his king in spite of the passed pawn, which Black now pushed forwards. Now, if White starts to defend now, it's too late. The passed pawn will win for Black. So he must carry on at all costs. He doesn't have any choice. Anand burns his bridges, rook to f4, and the pawn advances, becomes a queen with check. And now White's got various moves, but there's only one move that's any good, and that's to move his bishop to f1 to stop the check. Black then moves his queen to d1, and if rook h4, the black queen jumps back to h5, and this probably ought to be a draw. But the move played was a tragic blunder. Anand played this move to stop the check, completely overlooking that after black's reply, if the rook goes to h4 to threaten checkmate, black simply takes it off and white's attack evaporates and white comes out a rook down, for which he has no compensation at all. So in this position, Anand resigned the game, essentially losing the match, going 3 points down, and this was a game where brilliant defence triumphed over bold but ultimately inaccurate attacking play by Anand. But I must say, it's one of the most dramatic World Championship games I've ever seen. It could have gone either way, and I feel that Carlsen's computer-like ability to calculate was what triumphed and brought him the full point in this encounter. It was a wonderfully exciting way to essentially end the World Chess Championship. So that's game 9. That's the game that finished off the contest between Carlsen and Anand for the world title. The final game, game 10, was drawn. Carlsen could have won it, missed his way, and it was a draw, but it didn't matter. So, to recap, this programme will be available from tomorrow on TVapex. You can watch it again and again and again. Please send your questions to me at the Times Twitter feed. It's absolutely free. www.twitter.com/times_chess. I'll do my very best to answer all the questions that come in. Please also press the follower button and become a follower of the Times chess coverage. And once I've finished transmitting now, do please, if you wish to carry on following chess on TVapex, go to 12 Best Games of Chess, easily findable. It's up here on TVapex, and it's my comments on the best, most exciting, most brilliant games of chess ever played by the great champions of the past. I hope you enjoyed this transmission, special one-off transmission on TVapex about the World Chess Championship, and I hope to be in touch with you soon when you send in your queries to me at www.twitter.com/times/times_chess. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Everyone, good night.